Herkese günaydın, hoş geldiniz. Bugünkü webinarımıza. Benim ismim Yasemin Erdal. Daha önceki webinarlarımıza katılanlar sanırım artık az çok tanımışlardır. Bu aslında 9 seriden oluşan webinarlar serimizin 6.'sı. Ve bildiğiniz gibi webinarlarımızın amacı sizleri Avrupa Birliği'nin çerçeve programları olan H2020 ile başlayan ve devam eden Accelerator programı ile ilgili bilgilendirmek. Bugünkü etkinliğimiz Ufuk 2020'de Türkiye projesinin ikinci fazı kapsamında organize edilmekte. Bu proje Avrupa Birliği ve Türkiye Cumhuriyeti tarafından ortak finanse edilen Sanayi ve Teknoloji Bakanlığı'nın rekabetçi sektörler çerçevesi programı kapsamında TÜBİTAK tarafından yürütülen bir proje aslında. Proje kapsamında çeşitli eğitimler, webinarlar, etkinliklerimiz olmakta. Bugünkü etkinliğimiz Zoom üstünden gerçekleşiyor. Artık son bir senedir eminim hepiniz yeterince aşina oldunuz. Fakat yine de teknik sorun yaşarsanız chatbox'tan bize yazmanız durumunda teknik arkadaşlarımız yardımcı olmaya çalışacaklardır. Benim projedeki görevim KOBİ aracı uzmanı olarak çalışmak. 2014 yılından beri KOBİ aracı, eski adı KOBİ aracı, yeni adı Accelerator olan programla ilgili çok yoğun bir şekilde çalışıyorum. Hem Avrupa Birliği tarafında Brüksel'de proje değerlendiricisi olarak çalıştım 4 sene boyunca. Onun dışında danışmanlık, mentorluk olarak aktif olarak çalıştığım bir programla ilgili. Bugün de bilgilerimizi sizlerle paylaşmaya çalışacağız. Bildiğiniz gibi Ufuk 2020 programı Aralık ayında bitti aslında. Ama Ocak 2021'de yeni program başladı. Ufuk Avrupa olarak adlandırılan. Şu anda maalesef hala detayları son programın bizlerle paylaşılmadı. Elimizde sadece taslak bir iş planı var yeni programla ilgili. Bu yüzden sizleri bu taslak üstünden çok da fazla bilgiye boğmak istemiyoruz değişebileceği için. Fakat bildiğimiz kadarıyla Accelerator programı devam edecek gene. Bazı ufak değişiklikler olmakla beraber. Her ne kadar ufak değişiklikler olsa da projelerin ve genel değerlendirme kriterleri neydi bunlar? Mükemmelliyetçilik, excellence, etki, impact ve uygulama kapabilitesi, implementation bunlar yine aynı kalacak. Yani aslında projelerin değerlendirme mantığı az çok aynı. O yüzden biz de gene bu 3 kriter üstünden bugünkü etkinliği sürdürmeye karar verdik. Çünkü bir sonraki başvuru tarihi şu anda 9 Haziran olarak görülmekte ve 9 Haziran'a yaklaşık 4 ay kaldı. O yüzden yavaş yavaş da aslında hazırlanmaya başlanılabilir diye düşünüyoruz. Bugün benimle beraber İngiltere'den uzmanımız Philip Soldan, Yunanistan'dan uzmanımız Grigoris Hatchikostas ve TÜBİTAK'tan Ulusal İrtibat Noktası Sayın Merve Diyarhanım bizlerle olacak. Bu etkinliğimiz yaklaşık 2 saat sürecek. Etkinlik boyunca bizler sunum yaparken chatbox'tan sorularınızı sorabilirsiniz. Hem etkinlik esnasında cevaplamaya çalışacağız hem de etkinlik sonrasında. Ayrıca bugünkü etkinliğin kayıtları ve tüm soru ve cevaplar sizlere bu 2 saatin sonunda vereceğim web sitelerinde yayınlanmış olacak. Yani o web sitelerine gittiğinizde hem etkinliği tekrar izleyebilirsiniz hem de tüm soruların ve cevapları bulabilirsiniz. Biliyorsunuz program İngilizce ve uzmanlarımız da yabancı. O yüzden bugünkü etkinliğin dili maalesef İngilizce. Ama eğer kendinizi soruları ifade etmek konusunda ya da bazı konuların anlaşılmadığı konusunda Türkçe destek almak isterseniz Merve Hanım ve ben 2 saat boyunca buradayız. Gene chatbox'tan yazmanız durumunda ilgili konuları Türkçe'de açıklayabiliriz ya da sorularınızı Türkçe sorabilirsiniz, cevapları Türkçe alabilirsiniz. Umarım faydalı bir etkinlik olur sizler için. Ben şimdi sözü Merve Hanım'a bırakıyorum. Tekrar katılımınız için teşekkür ederiz. Görüşmek üzere.
Teşekkürler Yasemin Hanım. Günaydın, herkese merhabalar. Ben çok kısa bir sunum yapacağım. Hemen paylaşıyorum. Sanırım şu an düzgün görünüyor.
Evet.
Tekrar günaydın. Ben de sunumumu çok hızlı bir şekilde Türkçe yapacağım. Ama Yasemin Hanım'ın da söylediği gibi biliyorsunuz Ufuk 2020, Ufuk Avrupa ve Accelerator İngilizce olduğu için uzmanlarımız programa İngilizce devam edecek. İlk slayttan gördüğünüz gibi aslında Ufuk Avrupa ile birlikte gelen en büyük değişikliklerden bir tanesi artık KOBİ aracı ulusal irtibat noktası değil, bütün bir EIC yani Avrupa İnovasyon Konseyi ulusal irtibat noktası olarak Ufuk Avrupa'da Tarık Bey ile birlikte görevimizi devam edeceğiz. Yasemin Hanım'ın dediği gibi ayrıntılar henüz resmileşmedi. Her an her çeşit değişikliğe açık olduğu için sizinle bunları paylaşamıyoruz ve çok ayrıntılı etkinlikler, bilgilendirmeler ve eğitimler düzenleyemiyoruz. Çünkü size verdiğimiz bilgiler başka bir taslakla değişebilir ve bu aslında bizlerin ve sizlerin zararına olabilir. Ayrıca hemen sunuma başlamadan şunu ekleyeyim. Saat 1'de Ufuk Avrupa launch etkinliği var, YouTube'dan canlı olarak yayınlanacak. Bununla ilgili bilgileri de Ufuk 2020 web sitemizden görebilirsiniz. Dilerseniz bu eğitimden sonra da onu takip edebilir, daha ayrıntılı bilgilere ulaşabilirsiniz. Bu arada hemen şunu da ekleyeyim. Mail adresimiz de değişti. Artık NCP SME değil, NCP EIC @tubitak.gov.tr'ye bize ulaşmak için mail atabilirsiniz. Şimdi buradan göreceğiniz gibi EIC Avrupa İnovasyon Konseyi'nin yapısı bu şekilde değişti. Sadece böyle bir taslak bilgi vermek istedim size. Artık konu güdümsüz çağrılar, çeşitli Avrupa Birliği'nin, Avrupa Komisyonu'nun belirlediği challenge'lar, zorluklara dayalı çağrılar ve Ufuk 2020'den de aşina olduğumuz ödüller ve aslında yine bildiğimiz iş hızlandırma servisleri şeklinde bir yapılandırma var EIC'de, Ufuk Avrupa'da. Aslında sunumu belki daha önceden katılanlar oldukça aşinadırlar. Ufuk 2020 web sitemizden bize her zaman ulaşabilirsiniz. Ufuk Avrupa'ya gidiş yolunda her türlü bilgileri, bilgilendirmeleri, dokümanları ve Avrupa Komisyonu'nun bize ilettiği çeşitli bilgilendirme toplantılarını haber şeklinde çok aktif bir şekilde yayınlıyoruz. Horizon Europe Ufuk Avrupa ile ilgili web sitemiz hazırlık sürecinde ve yakında yayınlanmaya hazır olacaktır. Bununla ilgili de zaten sizin haberiniz olur. Buradan gördüğünüz gibi Ufuk 2020 desteklerine tıkladığınızda KOBİ destekleri sayfasından Accelerator sayfasına buradan görebileceğiniz gibi ulaşabilirsiniz. Bütün etkinliklerimiz ve haberlerimiz burada bu sayfa üzerinden ulaşabilirsiniz. Biz Tarık Bey ile birlikte çalışıyoruz ve Ufuk Avrupa ile ilgili resmi bilgiler geldikçe Ufuk 2020 sitemizden aktif bir şekilde sizinle paylaşmaya devam edeceğiz. Ufuk Avrupa'ya hızlı bir şekilde bilgilendirmeye ulaşmak istiyorsanız en önemlisi bu web siteyi takip etmeniz ve bizim web sitemize üye olarak newsletter'a üye olmanız. Biraz önce söylediğim gibi KOBİ inovasyon destekleri olarak değil artık yeni web sitesiyle birlikte o kısımda düzenlenecektir. EIC, NCP'si olarak yolumuza devam edeceğiz. Bir de hepinizin bildiği gibi aslında biz hep Avrupa Birliği çerçeve programlarında TÜBİTAK olarak çeşitli destekler ve ödüller sunuyoruz. Bunların hepinizin aşina olduğu gibi katılımı artırmak, yani yeni oyuncuları çerçeve programlara katmak, yapılan başvuruların kalitesini artırarak başvuruların başarı şansını artırmak, Ufuk Avrupa'da liderliği artırmak, fonlanan ve eşküstü olan proje sayılarını artırmak ve aslında Türkiye'den yapılacak başvuruları artırarak çeşitli uluslararası alanda işbirliklerini artırmak bu desteklerin ve ödüllerin amacı. Bunlar da Ufuk Avrupa yolunda tasarlanmaya devam ediyor. Sunumu bitirmeden önce aslında ben ayrıca şu anda biten ama İNOSAP hala 3. taraflara açılan çağrıları devam eden İNOSAP programından da sorumluydum. Bu kapsamda İNOSAP 1 çağrısı kapsamında çağrının ana amacı 3. taraflara ki daha çok KOBİ'lere çeşitli destekler vermektir. Buradaki kare koddan görebileceğiniz gibi, ulaşabileceğiniz gibi orada hala pek çok açık çağrı bulunmakta. Bu çağrılar genelde KOBİ aracı faz 1'den aşina olabileceğiniz gibi çeşitli fizibilite desteklerine, projenizin konusuna göre tabii ki, projenizin testine, işte çözümünün pilotuna yönelik destekler sunmakta. Bence bu sayfayı bu aşamada, Accelerator'a başvuru aşamasında hala vaktiniz varken değerlendirmenizde fayda var. Çünkü burada başvuru değerlendiriciler Avrupa Komisyonu olmadığı için, daha çok Avrupa Komisyonu fonladığı proje sahipleri olduğu için Accelerator'a nazaran alması daha kolay. Başvurusu da pek çok KOBİ başvurmadığı için başvuru sayısı da az olan çağrılar. Mutlaka bunu değerlendirin. Bu konuda da sorularınız olursa her zaman bize ulaşabilirsiniz. Benim sunumum bu kadar. Dediğim gibi artık bize bu mail adresinden ulaşabilirsiniz. Pardon. Thank you for listening my short presentation. As Yasemin Hanım said that we are available during the program. If you would like to ask questions in Turkish, we are ready to answer them in Turkish or English. Please ask questions about the program before running the program to hand over to Philip. As you aware, our program is about how can prepare accelerate, how you prepare excellence proposal for the accelerator. You know, there is a lot of SME Turkish SMEs apply for the accelerator with the great ideas, but they cannot meet the EC criteria. So please ask questions during the program. Don't hesitate to ask questions. So I take over to Philip and the project team for the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Merve. I'll just sort out the presentation here. Hopefully that's on view. So just let me sort out the technology. There we are. So good night, then. I'm sitting in a very cold and lonely United Kingdom, but I'm delighted as always to speak to you. By now, our faces, I think, will be familiar to you, if not on our webinars, on our actual events. We're desperate for the day to come back when we can have face-to-face events and meet up with the SMEs involved in Horizon. Webinars are great and online training is great, but there is nothing like actually getting together and meeting people, and we do miss that. So we look forward to the day when that can happen. So my part of the presentation is to look at the impact and excellence issues we found when we've been in touch with SMEs. We've visited SMEs, and of course we worked on the earlier project where we visited 100 SMEs. We've seen 20 or 30 on this project, and we will be seeing more. So if you like, there are the issues we find within companies in terms of their structure, their team, and so on. And there are issues we find in relation to what the European Commission are actually looking for in the bids. So this morning's webinar really combines those two, issues within companies, issues within the actual requirements of the EC. My own background, I've been around a long time, as you can see. A mechanical engineer by profession, but worked in production in many different industries. And I've been working in Turkey now for almost 10 years. In fact, the first time I was in Turkey was about 50 years ago, even, when you were building the metro. So I'm quite a friend and familiar with Turkey. It's a wonderful country and some great people, and enjoy working there. So my present role is as key expert on the program. these are the mugshots. Sorry, they're in grey. Three of us are with you today, Grigoris, Yasmin and myself. Odysseus deals with IP issues and financial issues, and Alexander is our team leader, works with the intermediaries, such as universities and science parks and so forth. So a quick advert for our previous webinars. This is the 6th of 9 webinars we shall hold through the project. Those are all the different topics. Together, they make quite a powerful insight into what you should do, how it works, what you need to send. Of course, this is all based on Horizon 2020, and we're now in the transition into Horizon Europe. So some of the detail requirements may be different, but I think overall things won't change too much in terms of what the Commission are actually looking for. Excuse me, I have a drink. So they're all available on our website, which is here. And today's event, really, we thought it would be useful as we're transitioning into Horizon Europe to take a look back at some of the issues we've encountered along the way, in the hope that we can all learn lessons from the past, a famous line of politicians. We can all learn those lessons and do better in Horizon Europe. We are doing better in Horizon 2020, and we want that to carry on. So Horizon 2020 ended at the end of December. It had a budget of 70.2 billion, a huge amount invested in innovation, science and research, only part of the European Union's investment in industry. The objectives for Turkey are there, supporting Turkish participation, strengthening capacity in science, technology and innovation, helping Turkish researchers and universities and so on to integrate more with their European counterparts, and providing, through our project, a range of activities to support SMEs and other businesses looking to use European Union programs. And it ran from 2019 to the end of last year. Horizon Europe, even bigger budget, 95.5 billion. It's likely to be around 100 billion. So even given all of the problems we've seen with COVID and something of a recession, the European Commission is still very heavily committed to backing science and innovation. They see it as the way forward, the added value of knowledge, research and innovation, boosting the economies of Europe for the foreseeable future. The key objectives really remain the same, in that it's about helping Turkey basically in lots of different directions, and this project will run, as you can see, until December 2027. Any differences then between the operation of Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe? Any difference in the operation of Accelerator? We still await official details. These things take a little bit of time through, and we're reluctant to run an event on the new program until all of the details are official. As soon as we have those details, we should be running webinars and project writing events. We understand that they may introduce an initial 5-page proposal, plus a pitch deck and video. This is to get the idea over to the Commission. This is evaluated and accepted or rejected. If it's accepted, it goes into the preparation of a longer proposal, and there is support, we understand, or there may be support from mentors appointed to help in that process. The first cut-off date, we're told, is the 9th of June. This may change. So there are changes. We shall adapt to those changes, and we shall tell you about those changes as soon as we know officially what they are. Our project, even though it has the name of the previous program, Turkey in Horizon 2020, carries on until March next year. So we shall be around to help on Horizon Europe, even though our name is slightly out of date. Of course, it's a contractual thing. It keeps that name. Just a reminder, I'm always conscious of our webinars that we have people who heard this before and people who are new to it. So I go through this briefly If you want any more information, of course, it's all available on our website. But just quickly, the project activities we have, training, this webinar included, but we also have training with focus groups on particular sectors of technology, industry, and so on, training on intellectual property rights and how to protect them and share them, project writing camps, and access to risk finance, how you attract finance from the private sector. Networking, we've had our major brokerage events. We had a third brokerage event online. I don't know whether you participated. We can't at the moment undertake international study visits because, of course, there are travel restrictions all over the world, but we shall get around that by having other means of providing training. There will be award ceremonies when we can have them, and we will be running conferences and information days, probably online, on Horizon Europe. We've done some of those already for specialist groups. My particular area, the SME support, we provide one-to-one support for companies, 30 companies, to help them to prepare their bids by looking at their previous attempts and helping them to shape them up. We have specific events to help write projects and to look at projects to see how they can be changed through project writing camps. We can help on pitching to investors we've done, pitching to the European Commission is one which is yet to happen when we can get people together. Various consultancy feasibility reports, getting ready for investment, and so on. So quite a package of SME support. And last but by no means least, we have our website. We have a help desk that can help you to resolve issues. We have guidance on training. So quite a variety of help there, quite a range. 2/3 having been delivered. We're 2 years into a 3-year project, but there's still lots of events going on that can be of help. And just a sort of final roundup, people ask me, why should we participate? The obvious thing is to say, well, there is financial support, and that consists of grants to get into or get through the final stages of research and development. There is funding then to commercialize. That can be from the European Commission or from the private sector, so-called blended finance, where part of the arrangement is to have a grant and another part is to have venture capital investment. Support from mentoring. There is a mentoring program which has always been part of Horizon 2020, and I think will be expanded in Horizon Europe. And of course, Turkey has a national mentoring program through TÜBİTAK as well. So using mentors, build up management, have a better awareness of markets and commercial experience. Companies tend to say, I don't need anyone from outside to help me on these things. I know my business. You don't. You never stop learning. You never stop needing training. And if this advice is available for free, take it. You may not take the advice on board, but at least you've had another opinion and people questioning your business, your product, your markets. All of that helps, I think, to form your own strategy. A mentor is there to work with you and to question and offer alternatives. A consultant is there to tell you what to do. There's a difference between the two. A consultant will say, if I were you, I would do this. A mentor will say, why did you say you would do that? So there is a difference. As a company, it helps you take a more strategic view of where you are and where you're going. Business plan being, where are we now? Where are we going? How will we get there? So that's your strategic view. It gives you more commercial strength. You're more confident then. And it shows then with Turkish investors, with national investors, that you have more confidence. If you go through the European system, in effect, the EC, you've endorsed your product, your project, your idea by offering funding, and that also helps with investment and marketing. And it helps to amplify any grants that you've had nationally. It helps to make more use of that and to spin it out, if you like, in terms of where you spend your money. It gives you more options. So lots of participation. This is on the SME side, but of course there are much wider opportunities in Horizon Europe for collaborative research, academic research and so forth in lots of areas. Manufacturing, we tend to see health, social care, improving the situation for people who are disadvantaged either through health or income, so on. There's a very wide range. The European Commission has a fantastic range of websites, the Europa websites to begin with, and there's all the information you could ever want on those websites. They're excellent. So moving on then to look at the impact and excellence part of the chat. There are key criteria that must be met for accelerator projects. We know they're for SMEs. There's the definition, less than 250 employees, which is 97% of companies in Turkey. So it covers a very wide range. And up to 50 million turnover. 50 million looks a crazy figure for an SME, but you may have a highly automated factory turning over more than 50 million with less than 250 employees. So that's why it's there. The 6 requirements are there. The project must be cross-border. In other words, it must be transferable. It can't just stay within Turkey. It has to be something that applies to other member states and ideally across the world. The company must show high growth. You're growing at a good rate on the back of your project or projects. It must be disruptive. Disruptive is something that's always questioned, but we'll go into that in a second. Close to market, they're not there in this particular program accelerator to fund R&D. They're looking to fund the element of risk that's stopping your product getting to market. So although there's grant there for developments, the research part should have been done. You're looking at the final development, and in helping you with that development, the grant should then get you to a point where you're ready to commercialize, and the program can then offer support for that commercialization. Must be scalable. You must be able to build a volume of sales, because of course then that builds up your turnover and profits. And it must be at TRL 6. This is technology readiness level. There's lots of information on websites about this. TRL 6 is at the point where it's leaving R&D, it's leaving the development stage, and it's moving in towards a commercializable product being tried out by a wider number of people. All of that's available in our previous webinars and of course on Commission websites, as well as our own project website and TÜBİTAK. So the key evaluation criteria for projects, these will remain the same. It must have impact, it must show excellence, and they must be good implementation. So I said that we've visited many companies, we've dealt with many more, and independent of this project, all of the experts who are speaking to you this morning have worked with SMEs for virtually the whole of their working life. So there's something like 150 years of experience in the team of working with SMEs. So we know how they work. We are SMEs in our own right, and we've worked in both large and small businesses. So looking at impact, I'm going to go through some of the questions that evaluators may ask when they're looking at the proposal, or when they're talking as judges if the project gets as far as an interview with the Commission. And they're very simple question: is the product needed? Now, we ask these questions, the sort of answers we get are, it's so good, it must be needed. In other words, we've not really looked at the need, but we consider it so excellent, there must be a need. And this is a big gap. You have to prove that need. You have to show that you've looked at the market and the market needs it. Now, if you sit in the chair of the Commission handing out cash on a limited basis, you would ask that question. Okay, you've come to us with this project. You're looking for cash. Is it actually needed? When you think of your own domestic situation, if you're spending money on something in your apartment or house, do we really need it? It's an obvious question to ask, but it's something that companies tend not to investigate or investigate in a very shallow way because they're very proud of their development and they don't want anything to set it back. They don't want anything getting in the way of this very clever idea that they've had. So is it needed? That has to be shown. Who says it's needed? And the answer often is everybody we've asked. Now, who's everybody? Who have you asked? Have you asked friends, family, other colleagues in the same thing, other scientists, other engineers who think it's very novel and very clever? But it has to go beyond that. You have to look at the market, having looked at the need. Do the market say they want it? Where's the proof that the market want it? So where's the proof? The odd letter of interest from a potential customer is not good enough. There needs to be some sort of market study, ideally independently. And remember, when you think, well, that's going to cost us money, it's a big investment, it's a big return on that investment. If you do have someone external look at it, then it may be the difference between winning or not winning the funding. So it's worth looking to make sure that the market wants it, that they say they want it, and you have proven that. Who needs it? Where's the need? Again, it's considered relevant to everyone in the sector. These terms, everyone, you can't speak for everyone. You need to say what the sample was and on what basis they're saying it's needed. So carrying on with that, how many of them want it? You may have several people who say, this is brilliant, but what's the size of the market? We get the answer, there are 20,000 potential customers in this sector alone. Now, just looking at how many companies are in a sector is not good enough. Those companies are probably already supplied with something. You'd have to persuade them to buy your product. They would have to consider it and if it was, for instance, a piece of production equipment, how it links to other pieces of production equipment that are already linked. And it's human nature to say, how can we find a way of not having to do this? We look through a newspaper in the hope that we don't have to read anything. If there's an article we think that we should read, we read the first paragraph, and newspapers do this. They set out the headline in a paragraph to catch your attention. The hope then is, well, I can read this paragraph. Hopefully I don't have to read the article. If then you think, oh, I ought to read this article, you often then fold the newspaper, put it to one side and never look at it again. We look for reasons not to do things. So when it comes to companies changing direction, changing supplier, buying new equipment, buying equipment that's not tested, they take a lot of convincing. So therefore, the European Commission judges take a lot of convincing, and you need to convince them. You need to be sure of your facts. Where are they? Now, this is something we see so often in proposals. We're going to sell in Europe, then the USA and China. Now, Europe's 27 countries. It has different languages. It has different regulations. It has different stages of development, different competition. Europe is a collective market, but you need to be quite precise about where in that market you're going to sell. And if you are going to sell in that market, how will you deal with the language? How will you deal with different costing and competition? How do you know what the competition is? The USA, similarly, the USA, it's a United States, as we have United States of Europe, they have the United States of America. So very different needs across the USA. And China, people are attracted by the fact it's a huge market, but there are issues there with intellectual property protection, strong competition and low price competition. And of course, again, language and ways of doing business. So it needs to be far more precise than that. And I love to see, we've been to Germany, we have an agent who's prepared to sell in Germany. We realize the competition in Germany is, that's much more focused than simply saying we're going to sell in Europe. Even worse, looking at the first question, people will say what the size of the European market is. and then imagine that they're going to take the whole market for that product, which is obviously ridiculous. How much will they pay? It's simply seen as a multiple of costs rather than competitive pricing. Again, depending on the product, you can sell on a multiple of cost plus profit, which in Turkey, I have to say, tends to be quite a low figure because the initial cost is quite low. Or you can competitively price. If you have something which is much better than what's available on the market, sell it for slightly less rather than much less, because the benefits of the equipment will attract the buyer and they'll be prepared to pay a similar figure. So work out which is best, and see what sort of return you can get. If you get a high return through competitive pricing, then investors will be far more interested in putting money into your product. And the final question there, who will sell and service it? Quite often people say, we're going to build our own factory and make it and sell it ourselves. Now, okay, we're talking with an R&D company of perhaps 5 to 10 people who have a clever idea. There's no way that they're going to get the money together to build a factory. They don't have manufacturing capabilities. It's an entirely different set of skills and probably no interest in manufacturing. So the question then is, how do we get it to market? Do we actually have a partner? Do we sell under license? Do we sell the whole idea and stick to R&D? These are questions that should be asked before going into a bid, and these are the things that the judges will want to know. So the official line on impact, can the project demonstrate qualitative and quantitative impact, improving the quality of issues, improving on a factual basis the numbers of things? How many jobs will it create? Now that can be, of course, in your own business. It could be if the equipment is installed somewhere, it creates new jobs there. It may also displace jobs if it's more efficient than existing means. So be careful on job claims. I've always had this conundrum with automation. Automation, of course, improves the speed of production and lowers the cost, but it also lowers the number of jobs. Now you can say those jobs are created in maintenance and so forth, but as I say, there's a tension between the two. How much turnover will it give you? What sort of profit improvement will it be? And this tends to be, where will the company be in 5 years if we go ahead and invest this cash? What will your turnover look like and your profits? Will it be exportable? Does it need to be exported? Yes, because you need to export into Europe and wider markets, hopefully. Is it creating new intellectual property? Are there new patents? Have you taken care of those patents? Who owns the patents? Is the company transferable easily if it was to be sold to someone else and they needed that intellectual property? So again, has to be thought of. And of course, the investor is thinking, will there be a good return on our investment compared to many hundreds of other proposals who are looking for investment? Remember, it's a very competitive market. What's the potential for building up the volume? And what risks are you asking the EC to invest in? A very specific risk is what they like to see. So a Turkish experience is Turkish market's already a very good market for innovative products. Many of the businesses can impact nationally without exporting, but they don't tend to self-question on the issues I've just talked about in terms of market need and so on. Often short-sighted on the markets. They assume that the impressive technology alone will bring success. It's really good, so therefore it must sell. But they often forget that the majority of decision makers, and this goes for the European Commission as well as for companies, are not from a scientific or technical background. English isn't their first language, so they have difficulty with terminology. But many of the buyers, particularly in companies and larger companies, are accountants and marketeers. They want to know what money it's going to make compared to what they do now, and what share of market it's going to bring them. So If you have any questions on all of that, please send them in and we'll deal with them at the end of the presentation. And now a quick look at excellence. Again, into questions. Does the product already exist? You'd be amazed how many companies we go to where they say this is nothing like it in the world. Whilst we're talking, we look on the internet and we find something similar. Often they say, well, it's new to Turkey or it's only available in America. If that's the case, and it's available in Europe or America, it isn't new to market. So you have to be quite certain that the product doesn't exist. Now, I mentioned disruptive, step change, or incremental. Everybody thinks their project's disruptive. The internet's disruptive. The mobile phone was disruptive. The electric car isn't. The electric car is a step change. You're switching from one form of fuel to another. Incremental, that would be battery improvement in an electric car. Now, in the battery industry, a new form of battery would be disruptive to all the other batteries. So you to see your product in relation to others in the market and the stage of installation, if you like. But most companies think it's disruptive because they know it has to be ideally, and they think that will get them through. It won't. You have to show it's disruptive. If not, you must settle for where it is, step change or incremental. But those two, particularly incremental, are least likely to get the funding. But be honest with yourself rather than pursue a project that is not going to get there. There's this expression with the Commission, what's the product wow factor? Often it's seen as a pricing thing, but it isn't that. It's something which captures the imagination of the judges and they say, wow, that's a clever idea. So what is the wow factor? Does it have one? Very difficult with pieces of industrial machinery, but look for the wow factor and use that as the main challenge, if you like, to getting the proposal through. Where have you done your research? I mentioned earlier with marketing, we took a quick look on the internet. Not enough. You need to look far more into markets and needs. What are the competitive products? There's no competition. Sweeping statement. Often there is. It may not be as good. It may be better. But it's worth looking at the competition and then comparing your product with that competition, not just on price, but on its different attributes, what it does, how quickly it does it. Price, okay, is competitive, but it's not the main thing. How will you compete with larger corporations? Again, it's seen as a cost solution. It's the trader instinct. If you sell it at a low price, it will sell, but not so. It has to perform better, be more efficient, and so forth. How will you obtain approval? Sometimes that's seen as something you do once you get going, but of course in many markets, you have to have certification before you can sell into those markets. That can be built into your proposal, and we strongly suggest that you do that because that can be the final risk that stops your product being commercialized. Have you thought of partnering, licensing, or selling outright? So often in a scientific technical background company, the product, the project is their baby, and they don't want to pass it on. We want all the profits and we'll do it ourselves. As I mentioned earlier, that can be very impractical if you have the idea of building your own factory. So with excellence then, ask yourself, is the project currently beyond the current state of the art? This is what the Commission asks. Is it beyond what's around already? Is it very innovative? Is it novel? This is the wow factor, disruptive, or at least step change, the middle one, making a big difference. What is the competition? Why is your product better? Obvious questions. Is it unique? Does it have a unique selling point? Not many products do. There are very few disruptive and unique products around. And it's this element of risk I keep mentioning going forward. What risk is the Commission being asked to cover? Overall, our experience, there's been national success in building innovation capacity. And there's an excellence in science technology, many high growth SMEs, some very clever people in very good companies with excellent products. But the focus is often getting more grants, not the end products and services. This is something of an issue with the system. There's a poor connection to the real market needs because often the management team don't have the commercial experience. And often the team love to pursue the science instead of meeting market needs. They don't know when to stop. In my past career, I was director of a research institute. The researchers never wanted to finish the project. You kept saying, when's it going to finish? When can we offer it? There was always more research that could be done. So just in summary, the commissioner looking for you to express the need, to come up with a clever idea and to come up with a process that gets you there. But in Turkey, we often see that the process is what excites the researchers. From the process, they get a clever idea, and quite often they don't really consider the need. So you see there's a conflict there between what the commissioner are looking for and what we tend to find. A great pity, because there are some, I said, some excellent ideas and companies out there. So a quick summary. To be clear on the targeted customers and markets, most important, research them well, be confident and convincing that you've looked at your customers, you've looked at your markets, there is a need. And here it is, here's the evidence. Being very clear on the competitive pricing, pricing it for the market where it's appropriate rather than simply cost plus profit. Don't undersell it is my suggestion. Be clear on how you'll sell it. If it is equipment, you're selling it into a market, who will service it if it goes wrong? Who will install it? Who will train people in how to use it? This is particularly so with software, where it has to be ideally in the language of that country, which has, of course, to be good, or in English for international stuff. Who's going to service it? Your own team. People often say, oh, our own people. Do you really want to be flying all over Europe to do repairs and things? Good question. Can you have partners? Can you have agents? Can you have people who can not only help you sell, but can also do some of the installation and any repair work? Try to go to those markets. I know it can be expensive, but again, it's a good investment if you get the funding back from the Commission. And it's useful for you anyway to look at chosen markets, look at the issues, the competition. Ideally, go to an exhibition in your field. There are many, once we get back to some sort of normality, many exhibitions on different sectors. So worth looking. And at those exhibitions, of course, you can meet potential customers, potential agents, and so forth. Take wide opinions from potential markets. Don't just ask people you know in your scientific or technical area, or friends, family, or just Turkish companies. Take wide opinions from your potential markets. Take a view. What do you think of this? Can you think of anything similar, and so forth? Ideally, of course, to get letters from potential customers that you can put with your bid, saying, if this was around, we'd buy 50, 100 or whatever, which is ideal. Be realistic about how the product fits with current and projected trends. Lots of things are always going on. I saw some equipment recently that was geared to a high oil price. That's plummeted since the pandemic, and that process would be uneconomic. So if you're looking at a 5 to 10 year investment in equipment, it won't be made on the basis of oil prices being stable. Environmental issues are coming to the fore, less use of plastics, greater use of hybrid and battery cars. Lots of trends are going on. Make sure that you're on the crest of that trend rather than following, to make sure that you capitalize on the trend. And with excellence, making sure there's a proven need, I've already gone on about. Be realistic about the product in relation to what's already out there. Don't try and ignore competition. Say how you meet it. Don't convince yourself the product's disruptive when it isn't. I've talked about that too. Enough time has to be invested in researching the competition and being realistic about the way forward. Are you going to make it? Can you actually do that? Will you look for partners? Will you license? Or will you sell the whole idea? and try and cut through the team hype. I've worked in research teams myself where you all convince yourself this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, it would be in Europe, greatest thing ever, and therefore, it's the world beater. You need that hype, but also some reality in there to make it practical. So there we are. This is us. You can contact us. We're waiting for your questions and be delighted to answer them. And I think now I hand over to Yasemin. Yeah.
Thank you, Philip. I think there is no question, so I'll continue with my presentation.
Okay.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So just a second. Okay, if you have any questions during the presentation, please don't hesitate to write it on the chat box. We will be answering them. After Philip's brief introduction the program, I would like to give a presentation on our experience with Turkish SMEs bidding for Horizon 2020 funding, especially for the Accelerator program. I would like to introduce myself very briefly. I am the Deputy Project Director of this project, and I have been working in Turkish innovation ecosystem for the last 14 years. And my professional experience is in technology transfer, innovation management, and proposal evaluation. I worked for 9 years in the largest technopark in Turkey, so I'm quite familiar with the Turkish technology SMEs and startups. Between 2014 and 2018, I acted as an external evaluator for SME Instrument program. Accelerator was known as SME Instrument previously, as you may have already known. And I evaluated almost more than 300 proposals, and I have been involved in the preparation of a very successful proposals from Turkey. So I'm quite familiar with this Accelerator program. And I would like to share my insights and experience regarding the success rate of Turkish SMEs in these programs. Before I start with the presentation, I would like to show some slides on the performance of Turkish SMEs in Accelerator program. These data are from EU report, which was issued in 2018, which is the latest report officially issued by the EU. So we don't have the latest figures after 2018, but the rates are quite similar, I can say. If we have a look at this slide, we will see that the performance of Turkey is a bit lower compared to the rest of Europe. While some countries' success rate is around 10%, Turkey's success rate was around 3% in the application to the Accelerator program. And then we have a look at the funds allocated per country. We will also see that Turkey doesn't have a big share in this pie compared to many other European countries. So to sum up, we can say that Turkish SMEs can perform much better because I think they have the potential. So we would like to discuss about this low success rate and this low performance. In this slide, there are some more statistics about the number of companies who won the SME Instrument or Accelerator funding. Until 2019, Accelerator was known as SME Instrument, and there were two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 was providing a grant of €50,000 to complete the feasibility study of the company, and phase 2 was actually to support the research development process of the project, and the budget is up to €2.5 million. But in 2019, the European Commission removed phase 1, so there were no applications to phase 1 after 2019. It was the last year. Of course, phase 2 was more important because the funding is bigger, but the number of companies who got this funding is not at the desired level, unfortunately. In the last year, there was no company from Turkey who got to receive accelerator funding. So, what are the reasons for Turkey's low success rate? First of all, I would like to give this information that this project, phase 1, has been ongoing since 2015, and I have been involved in this project since 2015, Philip. And we have been visiting around 100 companies from all over Turkey who have made applications to the accelerator program. We met them, we reviewed their proposals, we had detailed meetings with them. So we had the chance actually to experience what was missing with their proposals and why those companies, why most of them failed in this program, even though they had brilliant technology people, brilliant engineers, and even though they have really high capacity. So why they cannot use this capacity in getting funding? What's missing here? And we would like to share our insights here based on our reflections from these meetings and this detailed analysis of their proposals. One of the biggest reasons we discovered was that although they had the capacity and they had the potential to create really disruptive technology and really disruptive solutions, most of them are not really full of their full potential. They are not as ambitious as they should be. And they are too easily satisfied with more of the same. They don't want to grow. For example, if they are operating in the Turkish market and if they are able to reach the Turkish clients, Turkish customers, it is enough for most of them. They don't have the vision to be a global company. They don't have the vision to research the global markets and analyze the international competitors and try to do much better than most of them, or try to do something that doesn't exist. So I think there's a problem about the self-confidence. Even though they have the capacity, maybe a bit confidence is lacking. And some of them are not really open to get views, recommendations, and opinions of outsiders. These outsiders could be consultants, mentors, or even their customers. So they should get more feedback from as many stakeholders as possible. And they should maybe pivot their technology, pivot their product in line with these comments. But most of the people, most of the founders, they are just in love with their technology. They are in love with their product. So they don't like to get opinion. They don't like to get critics. So it prevents them improving their performance. This is a handicap as well. There is little awareness on what competitors are doing. Philip also mentioned this. In this program, the European Commission is looking for disruptive solutions, which means that they expect you to develop something that doesn't exist on the market. But in order to do this, you have to know what's on the market and what's not. And it needs a really depth research. It needs more than doing some Google desk research. And this is lacking in most of the companies. When we were having our meetings and when we were asking them about what exists on the global markets, most of them didn't know about their global competitors, or the only information they knew was only some Google research results. So this is not enough. If you are planning to go to international markets and if you are planning to develop a global product, you have to know what's going on in the global market, and you have to know what your international competitors are doing. And in order to do this, you have to be very active on the field. Just staying in the office or in your city and doing some desk research may not be enough to get this detailed information. Most of the technology companies, they prefer to spend their funding or their financial or human resources on technology development, but there is little investment in marketing, in sales, and in such issues. So they are mostly focused in developing the technology, and they are more concentrated in developing the technology. But what is more important in developing the technology is getting this product, the final product, to the customers. If you don't reach your product to the customers, it doesn't mean anything. So I think after product development process is even more important than developing the product. But most of them are not really focused and interested in selling, in marketing. Their main obsession is to develop the technology. So there is a little problem in the commercialization process of their products. Many businesses in Turkey are still doing very well, the technology companies, but they have the potential and the capacity to do much better. Uh, as I mentioned earlier, we reviewed the proposals in a very detail with these companies. And the biggest problem in the proposals was that the proposed product or similar versions already exist in several countries, which means that they are proposing a product which is incrementally innovative, which means that there are some similar solutions on the market which actually meets the need of the customers, but the company is developing something improved. But proposing an improved innovation is not enough because we are not looking for incremental innovation. We are looking for disruptive innovation. We are looking for an innovation like mobile, smartphones. You know, when the smartphone entered into the market, all existing mobile phones are removed because there was no interest in the old technology. So the European Commission is expecting to get such disruptive solutions. Some of the companies, they don't use the company's main expertise in terms of technology or sector. For example, they are mostly operating in the defense sector, which we see a lot, especially in Ankara. They are working as a subcontractor of a big defense company, but suddenly there is a call by the Commission about Green Deal. So the company decides to develop a product in the Green Deal instead of defense because there is some funding, but they don't have the experience in the sector, maybe, or technology-wise. But just because there is funding, they turn their focus to the green technology field. So it may also be a handicap because if you are developing a product which is outside your core target market or customer base, it means that you may have difficulties in accessing to your target customers, in accessing to potential customers, and it may have a negative impact on the evaluation of the proposal. One of the biggest mistakes made in the bidding of the proposals by the companies is that they don't spend enough time in terms of money and funding. This accelerator proposal program is not just a template filling process. It needs more investment. You have to be fully focused because the accelerator template is actually the business plan of your company, where you define your target market, where you define your business model, your revenue model, where you make detailed assumptions about your cash flows, how you grow, which countries you're gonna expand. So these are all very strategic decisions, and you cannot just sit and prepare these decisions in a week time or in a couple of weeks time. It needs a true thinking. It needs detailed brainstorming sessions within the company. So you have to be prepared to spend some time. But unfortunately, the technology companies are always too busy in preparing some project and delivering the deadline, existing to their deadlines. So they are always too busy, and they don't spend enough time. And before the deadline, they come together and they try to develop a proposal, and it may not be as good enough as it is expected. Another issue is the confusion over the business model and the revenue models of the company, which is about the commercialization process, which is about how this company is going to make money over this product. As I mentioned in the earlier slide, they are really focused, the technology companies are really focused in the technical issues, in how they can make a perfect product or how can they improve the technological dimension. But when it comes to how they're gonna make money, what is the pricing that should be, or which business model they should adopt, they are either not as experienced or they are either not as interested as in the technical dimension. And in the accelerator program, the commercialization potential of the proposal is more important than the technical potential of the product. So they should really be thinking about the commercial side, and they should really be thinking on how to make money, how to sell this thing. So enough manpower should be devoted to this process. And there should be some balance in the team in terms of technical people and business people, because all these issues that I mentioned, the commercial issues, the business models, pricing, revenue models issues, may be a bit unfamiliar to technical people. And when the team consists of only technical people, of course, they may face problems in the commercial side. So more balanced team should be composed. If there is no such person in the team, you should try to get the support from outsiders. And the team shouldn't only be composed of by technical people, but also by business people and by commercial people as well. So in summary, the Turkish SMEs find it easier to apply for national R&D grants like TÜBİTAK and KOSGEB. If we have a look at the figures of applications from different European countries, we will see that there are so many applications from Spain, Italy, UK, France, because they don't have these national grant options in their countries as Turkish SMEs have. So Turkish SMEs have an alternative to EU funds. Instead of dealing with EU funds and trying to compete with European SMEs, they apply to TÜBİTAK or they apply to KOSGEB, and they compete. They have to compete only with Turkish SMEs, which is easier. So there is not as many applications as there should be to EU grants by Turkish SMEs. Most of the technology companies, they don't have a written formal business strategy. They are not strategy driven. They are not market driven. They are technology driven. The technology people come together, they establish a company, and they are very capable in some technology field. So they just try to develop a product in the technology field, and the business side is neglected. Some of the companies, they simply respond to customer requests. For example, they have a big customer. It can be in the IT sector or it can be in the defense sector, and the company works as a subcontractor of this big company. So what they do, they develop projects on the request of this big defense company, for example, and this big defense company is actually leading the SME. So what happens is that they can't be a product focused company, but they stay as a project-based company. You know, they just develop projects for big clients based on their requests, and if they don't have a business strategy, they are driven by the needs of these big customers. There is poor balance of management skills, mainly technical, scientific versus business. And technology and research is what really excites them, not selling, not making money. But it's not a desperate situation. I think there's hope, and we are starting a new program by Horizon Europe, and there will be bigger funds. Now there is more awareness on the EU funds. So if we start early in this program, if we start early in creating awareness, I think we can do much better in the next program. First of all, I would like to say that Turkish engineers are really very talented and they are very smart. I have been working not only with Turkish companies but also with European companies, and I can say that we have really very capable, talented, qualified technical people. And there are good technological developments in technoparks. What is very hopeful and important from my perspective is that in the recent years, there's an increase in national VC and private funds ecosystem in Turkey. The VCs, the private funding, this capital, these terms were very unfamiliar Turkish SMEs before, but in the last couple of years, I think there is more demand and there is more supply in this risk capital ecosystem as well. It's important because the accelerator process is very similar to a VC process. What they are looking for are very similar. They would like to invest in a company which has the capacity, which has the potential to be a global company, and which can disrupt global markets, and which are more commercial oriented. So if you are dealing more with VCs, you will be more confident and more familiar with accelerator process as well. Unfortunately, the VC ecosystem in Turkey was not as developed as in Europe. It is still not, but it is progressing. So I think it's a very good progress. I think another very important factor, a good thing with Turkish SMEs is that the existence of TÜBİTAK. TÜBİTAK is really very supportive in EU application processes, both technically and financially. The NCPs are really helpful. They can provide you any support. They also provide funding if you would like to get some external support for proposal writing or for participating in trainings, for finding partners. If you go to this link, ufuk2020.org.tr, it's about in Turkish and English, you will find what type of support and awards are provided by TÜBİTAK for the application process. And I think it's a good thing, and you should definitely try to find out more about TÜBİTAK support if you are planning to apply for the accelerator program. So, how could SMEs do better? First of all, you have to be confident that you can do as good as any EU SME, EU startup, but you just need to be more focused in becoming a global company. You have to, instead of just focusing in Turkish market, you have to focus in global markets. And instead of comparing yourself with Turkish competitors, you have to compare yourself with global competitors, and you have to, you should try to do much better than they are doing. You should be ready to make some investment in terms of time and money. You have to get essential data, and you have to establish a solid foundation. You should have a good team, and you should get external support if you need to. And you should do detailed brainstorming sessions in developing a proper company strategy. You should have a strategy for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. So you should define where you would like to go. Not your big client, big customer should define where you should go, but you have to be on the captain seat. So this accelerator proposal, as I mentioned, is actually the business plan of your company, and it's a very strategic document. So you have to be deeply involved in this process, and it needs a change in the mindset of the SME founders or managers. You shouldn't just let your technical people write this proposal. As the founder or the decision maker of your company, you have to be actively involved in this process. And the proposal writing needs more than participation in 1-2 days of training or listening to some webinars. If you intend to apply, you have to be ready to commit more time. It needs time, it needs a couple of months to prepare your vision, your goals, where you would like to go. So it's a strategic thing, and you have to make some investments. The upper management, the decision makers, should be fully involved in this process. As I mentioned, it is too important to be left to the just technical people or people who don't have any decision-making power or who don't have any vision about the purpose of the company. And even if you get external support from outside consultants or mentors, no external person can know your business strategy better than you. So you must guide them. You must guide external people. In the last two slides, I would like to mention about the pitching, because as you know, the accelerator consists of two stages. One is the remote evaluation. First, you prepare your documents and then you send them online to Brussels, and the remote evaluators evaluate them remotely. So you are not involved in active participation during this process. But if you get over the first stage, and if you make it to the pitching session, you are invited to Brussels for pitching. And in those pitching, there will be 5 to 6 judges who will be listening to your pitch deck and who will be asking you detailed questions. And these judges that you will meet are mostly the representatives of the VCs. So I mentioned in the earlier slides that the accelerator process is very similar to a VC process. So here, VC people, VC representatives as the judges who will be evaluating your proposal and who will give the final decision of go or no go. And if you have already been in touch with some VCs, the most important criteria they will be evaluating will be the team. So no matter how good your product is, no matter how big the market is, if they don't believe that this team is fully capable of implementing this project, they will never invest in you. So team is important. And when we say team is important, we are not just talking about the qualified technical people or qualified engineers, but we are talking about a balanced team. So the balance is the most important criteria here. Even if you have a very good technical person, a CTO, you should definitely have some business people on the core team. When you go to the pitching, they will ask you who is the CEO, who is the CMO, who is the CTO of the company, who will be responsible from what, and is that person is capable enough or experienced enough in implementing this task. For example, you may have 3 founders, or you may have 3 high-level managers in your company, and who are all technical, but you may name one of them as the CMO. But is this CMO, Chief Marketing Officer or Chief Sales Officer, the person who will be responsible from the marketing, sales, or business development tasks? Is this person really capable of doing this? Does this person have any prior experience in the sales or in the marketing of this technology before? Does this person have enough connections, enough network to make it to the global markets? So the profile of the people, of the key people, is very important. And the participation of women is very important in EU funds. So I would recommend that at least 30% of the team should be women. It will be really good. And if you have a CEO or CMO or C-level person in the team who is woman, it's even better, because EC would like to promote the participation of women in technology companies, and they would like to actually increase the diversity in the team. So diversity is also very important. People from different cultures, people from different genders, people from different backgrounds. So it's very important thing. After the team, they will closely scrutinize your business and revenue model. They will ask you, so how are you gonna make money? Because remember, these people are VC people, and what VCs are interested is when they invest in your company and when they exit, they would like to get maybe 10 times, 20 times more money. You know, they are more money oriented, they are profit oriented. So they would like to discuss, they would like to talk about your financials, about your cash flows. So what cash flow assumptions do you have in the next 5 years? So how do you assume that you will make this number of sales? How many customers are you planning to reach? How are you going to reach customers? Who are these customers? So they will really ask you this type of questions regarding the market, regarding the customers. A common problem we see about the cash flows and expected cash in, expected revenue is that the companies make a very top-down, adopt a very top-down approach. So they don't really know about their potential market. They don't know about their serviceable available market figures. So they just make some assumptions. We will sell 5,000 units of our device in the next 2 years. But how did you reach this number of 5,000? Also, your cash out, for example, you will have some expenses when you try to deliver this product to the market. But did you really think about, did you really make health estimations on your expenses, on your operational costs, or maybe on your manufacturing costs, on your distribution costs? So these financials are really important when it comes to pitching sessions. So you should really give a good thought on these financials. If you have a B2C model in your proposal, you have to convince the judges with real numbers, such as your traction numbers. For example, if you have the beta software version, how many customers, potential customers you may have reached so far, or how many visitors do you have, even for your beta version. If you have B2B model, you have to tell the panel about your existing relations, about your connections to potential customers. So you are planning to reach big telecom companies in the global market. Which one do you have connections at the moment? How you plan to reach them? How you will make? How you will plan to get this meeting, for example, with your potential customers? Do you think they will be convinced about your product? So did you ever get into touch with them? What type of feedback you got from them? So you will get this type of detailed questions about your potential customers when you make it to pitching. So you have to be really well prepared about this. And in order to do this, what I would recommend is that you should make as many pitches as possible in front of different VCs. In Turkey, or if you can do this abroad, it's even better. Because practice makes perfect, and you may not be very confident if you have never done any pitching before judges before. But if you try to make some pitching, make some preparations in advance with some VCs, even with local VCs in your city, I think it will be a good preparation for you, and you will feel more confident when you go to the pitching in the European Commission in front of European judges. That's all about my presentation. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, you can write on the chat box. We will try to answer them. If not, now Grigor will give another presentation to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yasemin. Let's wait a couple of seconds to see if there are any presentations and then any questions, and then I will share my screen. Yasemin, can you please stop sharing your screen so that I will share mine? Thank you very much.
I think it's done now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So can everybody see my screen? Does it look okay?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So, hello everyone. Very nice to see you even virtually, although I must admit, like every one of us, I have missed a lot of live events. Let me briefly introduce myself. I'm Grigoris Hadjikostas. I'm the training coordinator in the project Turkey in Horizon 2020. I've been a foot soldier in the game of European funding for the past 17 years, with experience apart from Turkey, also in other countries, my home country, Greece, Serbia, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Poland, Tunisia, etc. What I will try to do today is I will try to focus on issues related to the section 3 of the proposals implementation, which is about some key aspects related to the conceptualization of SME Accelerator or EIC Accelerator projects. So I will try on one hand to present to you some learning takeaways from our experience working with Turkish teams, but also from our experience working with teams outside Turkey. And I would like to highlight that, believe it or not, the problems are very much the same and the challenges are very much the same, because essentially in the majority of the cases, we have very talented technical teams, entrepreneurs with lots of knowledge and lots of ideas in their technical domain, but who are still trying to address the challenges of entrepreneurship. So more or less the problems we have seen are similar. And then I will try to quickly scroll you through what we were proposing through our trainings and what we believe is still a good, valid approach, clarifying the things that have been tricky or difficult during the presentation. So, first, let's start about the financial requirements. This has been an extremely challenging topic for many of the applicants, for many of the startup founders. One thing that we have seen, some of the issues that we have seen in our collaboration with startups and SMEs are, first of all, the lack of readiness to provide financial data and no clear responsibilities within the team in the collection and the processing of financial data. Also, the technical co-founders, by definition, have a limited familiarization with financial and accounting issues because they're mostly technical people, and it makes sense. Unrealistic financial projections, sometimes too modest, no hockey stick. No hockey stick is this very steep raise in revenues or profits or sales that the investors are expecting to see in a company that qualifies for such a program, for an EIC Accelerator program. Sometimes the unrealistic financial expectations are on the other side. They are too ambitious. They are claiming that they will get a very big share of the total market. They're not taking into account realistic estimations of the market size and the potential of the company to address a part of this market. Sometimes unrealistic issues are happening with the budget. The budget can be too low, too modest, not showing enough ambition, to capture global markets, and that's a problem because we all understand that capturing global markets is a very costly story that requires lots of investment. On the other hand, sometimes they are underestimating the need to hire experienced and well-trained people to achieve this thing. Very often, the co-founders believe that pretty much they are capable of knowing everything, and they only would like to hire people who are like juniors and not to their level, while the opposite needs to happen. But sometimes we also see unrealistic budget with respect to being too high and, more important, being not relevant to the scope. Keep in mind that such projects, EIC Accelerator projects, are aiming to finance your scaling up, the global expansion. They're not aiming to finance the operational expenses of the company in a business as usual scenario. So it's not a grant that will help you survive. It's a grant that will boost your company, that will help your company accelerate and grow very quickly. And sometimes what we see, and it's also a problem, is high costs on subcontracting. This also is a problem because European Commission wants to see that the company is able to execute the project itself. It's a very bad signal when a large proportion of the budget goes to subcontractors, particularly in cases where these activities are supposed to be in the core competence of the company. So if you are in a software development company and you're subcontracting 30% of your budget to an Indian company to develop the software for you, this is not something that the European Commission would like to see. I will very quickly scroll you through some suggestions that we are making to the startups and the SMEs we are supporting in order to tackle those issues. First of all, you need to properly prepare the ground. You need to engage the people in your team, the right people in your team. One common misconception is that let's ask the accountant to fill in the tables, but that's not always right. Because we need to have also the sales perspective, because the sales perspective is the perspective which implies the growth perspective of the company. And we need the active engagement of the CEO to monitor the process, to make sure that all these financial projections are in line with the strategic directions of the company. More important, to plan the budget and also to make informed strategic decisions. Should we go for blended finance option? Should we stick to our own investors? Should we only stick to the grant of the EIC Accelerator? These are decisions that the CEO needs to make And in order to make them, he or she needs to be actively involved in all the stages of preparing the financials. Then, here are some basic documents that you need to have in your disposal very quickly if you are planning to apply for such a call. This goes without saying that you need to get yourself familiar with those documents. What is your balance sheet? What is your profit and loss account? What are the statements of change in equity, and also your annual reports? Our stronger suggestion in this case would be to constantly keep a data bank, to constantly keep those information at your disposal, because this helps you a lot in filling all the financial details that are requested by the call. I will not go in detail into the basic terminology because we have done it quite a few times in the past. I'm just providing it for the sake of having some reference point for the people who are for the first time attending our training, so that you have it in the presentations which you will have access to later on. So you need to understand the basics, like what are your assets, what are your liabilities, what is your net equity, and you need to understand what is your break-even point. As we discussed it quite often in the past with Philip, break-even point is the point where your company stops losing money. It's the point where your fixed and variable costs can be covered by your sales, by your revenues. After that point, if you are lucky enough, you start making profit. And the question is, should a startup be already on the break-even point to apply for the EIC Accelerator? The answer is no. A startup can be a little bit still on the losing side because it's investing a lot of money on research and development. It is investing a lot of time in setting up the team, and it has not achieved the commercial expansion yet. However, when you are applying for such a proposal, you have to demonstrate a clear roadmap and a clear path upon which you will reach to the break-even point. You will stop losing money soon, and you will start earning profits and growing part of the company organically with your own strengths. So, with respect to the financial table, just to sum up, what is important is accurate description of the past financial performance, realistic yet ambitious description of the future estimation, actually, of the future financial performance of the company, and of course, a realistic yet ambitious and very much aligned to the scope of the call project budget. These are the things that you need to have in mind when you are preparing your financial activities. And because a very important part of the evaluation is indeed on the finances, you need to start this as early as possible, and you need to have your team fine-tuned for this assignment as soon as possible. These are the tables that you practically need to fill in, at least in the previous call. I don't want to go into details on those, but what I would like to do is to give you a few advices with respect on planning the budget. First of all, start on time. It's not a good idea to start working on the budget in the last day of your submission, as sometimes we have seen happening. Make sure that you don't forget any cost items. Look in the details. Realistic estimations are very important. Approval from the CEO, what we discussed in the beginning, is also very important because we need to make sure that the budget is exactly reflecting the plans and the dreams of the CEO of the company, of how the company will be in a few years. Avoid raw consumptions, and also avoid poor planning because it creates uncertainty, and this uncertainty will be visible in the reviewers. We have a very good practical example in our website with respect to how you prepare a budget. So this is the link. I strongly encourage you to click on the link afterwards and become familiar on the process of preparing the budget. Another topic that was introduced as a novelty in the EIC Accelerator and still remains unclear to many people involved is the concept of non-bankability. Because we're talking about non-bankability, which is a very sensitive issue, and it requires a very balanced approach in understanding what kind of non-bankability is positive for EIC Accelerator and what kind of non-bankability is not positive for the EIC Accelerator. Having said that, we have identified a number of problems in this whole concept. One is that many people don't still understand what we mean by non-bankability. Another aspect is that many of the applicants don't have enough previous experience with private investors, venture capitalists, etc. The VCs themselves very often don't understand the concept of non-bankability, and they very often find themselves feeling that they are competing with the grants, which is not the case. It's actually exactly the opposite. Sometimes companies are non-bankable for the wrong reasons, not because of some systemic failure of the capital market, but because they shouldn't, they don't deserve, let me put it like that, to have the private sector investments. And sometimes the companies are non-investable because of a wrong shareholder structure, because fundamentally some deals that the founders made in the very beginning of the company with some people who contributed are not proper. Let us look at the topics one by one to see how we can tackle them. So first of all, as Philip mentioned earlier, we are looking for risky projects. EIC Accelerator is looking for risky projects. There has to be a major risk. And the whole purpose of the project is actually to decrease the level of risk in order for private investors to chip in, to join. Because the problem is that if an investment is too risky, then private investors might not want to join. But in that case, then the opportunity for scaling up is lost. And it's lost not only for the company itself, but also for the potential investors and for the European economy. But let's see some of the reasons why a project might be non-bankable. First of all, it might be lacking the attractiveness from a business perspective. It might have constraints due to the shareholding structure, or it might be the result of a systematic risk capital market gap. And it is only the third case that these projects will be good material for EIC Accelerator. Let us become a little bit more concrete in that aspect. And this is a real example of a company of my friend Manolis in Greece. He's working with industrial automation. They have a very healthy company of 10 people. They are applying great technologies. Their customers are very much in favor of them. They are also very innovative. They use automation technologies to solve real problems. So they are applying technologies from global leaders, from Siemens, from Mitsubishi, from Omron, from Fanuc, from Schneider, to solve real problems in the food manufacturing sector, in the public sector, in industrial setups, in many cases. So, are they technologically strong? Yes, they are. Are they innovative? Yes, they are very much. But they have some reasons for which they are not EIC Accelerator material or VC material. What are those reasons? First of all, they don't want to scale up. They are applying proprietary solutions of other companies, so they're actually integrators of other technologies in their local market of Northern Greece. So they are not developing any proprietary technology themselves. They do not have global ambitions. They do not have scale-up potential. This is a very solid company, a very much sustainable company. Many families are surviving through the income that the company generates, and it will exist for the next 10, 20 years for sure, because they have a very solid customer base. But they do not have a scale-up potential. Hence, these are not the companies which are bankable in the context of EIC Accelerator. Let's look at another company here that is applying very, very advanced technologies for robotic technologies for tackling an AI for tackling the issues of mosquitoes. As you can imagine, this is a technology which is very much on the top. This is a funded company, actually, from EIC Accelerator. And this is exactly a company that has a proprietary technology aiming to solve a very strong, a very big problem all over the world. And it has global ambitions and it applies deep technology concepts. So this is the difference between a non-bankable and a bankable technology. Obviously, the second one, the one that we are looking at now, is much more risky. Obviously, this company might not exist in 5 years and the people who invested might lose their money. Yes, indeed. But that's why we have a clear connection between risk and return. Let's go now in another example. So imagine the case that a few researchers in a lab come up with an excellent idea, and this idea might be productized and might lead into a spin-off company. And let's look now at the cap table, at the shareholding structure of this particular company. So you have 2 co-founders with 20% each. You have a few researchers and the professor, and they collaborated in the beginning to do the research, to co-author the scientific paper, and to support the company mentally and ethically, but they are very busy with their academic duties, so they don't work in the company on a day-to-day basis. Then, in the very beginning, the company needed to employ a software engineer who was happy to accept equity instead of payment, and he also has 10% of the company. And last but not least, the company needed some premises and they didn't have money. So one of the founders approached his uncle who had some empty offices, and he hosted the company in his premises for 2 years, and he also accepted equity. Regardless of the value of the idea, regardless of how important the technology is, regardless of how profitable potentially this company might be, this is a no-go for investors. Why? Because of the cap table. Because in its current form, the majority of the shares belongs to people who are not actively involved in the day-to-day running of the company. And this is already a very good reason to kill any good idea. Particularly, we have seen this happening in many ideas coming from research labs. So this means that there need to be lots of careful planning when we are creating the company in the very beginning to make a sustainable shareholding structure. So this is what typically investors expect to see. You need to have a 40% that belongs to the co-founders. You need to have another 40% that belongs to the people who are in the founding team, but who are operationally active in the founding team. And you always need to keep aside 20% as an option pool that will incentivize other people that you will need along your path to scaling up to join the company. Let's see now a typical case of the company that has been funded. And of course, we all know the lady in the picture. This is Angela Merkel. But what we don't know is that the founder of this company came up with a very solid technical solution, a realistic business model, and got funded by the SME instrument phase 2 or EIC Accelerator, as it's now called, for a few reasons. First of all, they had a patent technology. They had demonstrable reduction of costs which can be quantified. They were positioned in a technology that will grow in the future, and they already had contracts signed. They already had customers. Plus, as you can see, they had a very ambitious projections, a very ambitious plans, aiming at 90 million euros of revenues and aiming at 235 employees 3 years after the finish of the project. As you understand, these are very important numbers that are making the reviewers understand why this project needed to be financed. So technically speaking, we are looking, when we're talking about non-bankability, we're talking about those cases that they are very much into deep tech. However, due to risk and due to the fact that VCs might not be able to understand what they are doing, they are lacking capital. And many people will ask, okay, why don't they get money from the bank? Because banks are used in financing companies that they understand. Banks are used in financing companies with proven business models, with normal rates of return, with normal revenues, and with predictable behavior financially wise. So banks would never finance the previous company. Why grant schemes fail? Because they're too slow, because they are overwhelming the founders with deliverables, because they're sometimes because of the nature of the collaborative research and the bureaucracy, you're losing much more time in meetings and report writing than in actually doing your job. So for all these reasons, deep tech, high-tech companies with global ambitions, with big markets to address, with patented technologies, with scale-up potential, they have chances in EIC Accelerator. And these are the non-bankable companies that EIC Accelerator is looking for. So whenever you are entering such a case, please remember to very well to demonstrate why, particularly in the case of Turkish companies, use relevant facts and data from Turkey, why your company cannot receive additional money from VCs, why your company cannot rely only on grants, and obviously why your company cannot get into the banks. Also, please demonstrate all the collaborations and all the events you have already established with investors. If you already had some investors, even in the case that you didn't have some investors, but you were aiming to demonstrate that you are in contact with them, and the feedback you got from investors is that they are interested very much at your company, but at this point they see it as a very risky technology or a technology that they don't fully understand. That's also a very good signal for the EIC Accelerator, that you are EIC Accelerator material, that you are a non-bankable company for the right reasons. Then, some things we have seen related to the organization of the project, let's say to the housekeeping of the project in the planning phase. Sometimes unrealistic timetables, particularly if it comes from technical people concerning demonstration activities, because people tend to have a very good knowledge of the technical development and they can very well plan ahead the technical developments, but sometimes they're underestimating the effort and the time needed to demonstrate, to put the product out in the market and receive feedback from the market. Also, sometimes people like to create overcomplicated structures with too many work packages, tasks, deliverables, milestones, which is not always a good approach. We're not impressing evaluators with complexity. Most of the times, we're impressing them with effectiveness and simplicity. Sometimes we're lacking the clear responsibilities, who each person is responsible for every work package, how this responsibility fits well with the profile of the person, etc. And sometimes we don't understand, and that was really tricky, even for me in the beginning, to understand the borders between projects that are needed to be financed through the EIC Accelerator grant and the ready-to-market, the market deployment activities, TRL9 activities, which are aimed to be financed by the blended finance option. So, normally, a very quick overview of how we suggest to organize. This is already a quite big project. 7 work packages might be a lot for an EIC Accelerator project. We need to think a little bit, how can we squeeze them? How can we have as little as possible by performing all the necessary activities? Then it's very important that we have up to TRL8, up to technology readiness levels, which are like proving our concept, we can rely on EC grant. Then, until we reach the break-even point, and for TRL9 market deployment activities, we need to look at blended finance or other private sector financial sources. Let's try, a suggestion from the European Commission is, let's try not to have more than 5 work packages and only add the essential deliverables. Sometimes it's good to have only 1 deliverable per work package. This is how a work package description will look like. Very quickly, just to refresh the memory of the people who have participated. With respect to deliverables, it's very important to understand that each work package needs to finish with a deliverable. The deliverable can be a document, a demonstrator, something else, software technical diagram, and also it has to have a particular dissemination level, being public, confidential, or classified. And one important thing is the milestones. Milestones are those critical points in the lifetime of the project that a third party, let it be an external investor or the officer of European Commission or any other stakeholder, can monitor the progress of the project. A milestone is an important event in the lifetime of the project that once achieved, it gives us a clear indication of that the project is on the right track. And again, with milestones, there is the art of putting enough milestones, but not way too many. Last but not least, I will also talk a little bit about the pitch deck, what we have seen happening. And again, this is an experience not only from the Turkish teams, but also from teams all over Europe that I have been supporting in my activities. One major mistake is because the pitch deck comes at the end, that the companies work on the pitch in the very last moment of preparation. Another aspect that is like a problem in pitch decks is that they underestimate the visual appearance of the document. Sometimes they think that it is enough to put lots of text, lots of technical diagrams, but they ignore the fact that very often the evaluators are coming from the investor side and not from the technical side, so they will not be impressed by super complex and sophisticated formulas. Obviously, many people have limited presentation skills, and this is something that can be only tackled with training, with, as we call it, stage flight time. So the suggestion here is take advantage of every opportunity to pitch your idea. There are so many startup competitions. There are so many pitching events, either in Turkey or at the European level. Don't miss any opportunity to stand in front of the crowd, either physically before COVID, virtually now, hopefully soon again physically we will be able to do that. Don't miss the opportunity to stand in front of the crowd and pitch your idea, to try to capture the audience's vibe and try to understand how to do it live. Then, sometimes people are presenting generic pitches which are aimed at investors but not taking into account the EIC Accelerator requirements. And this is a major issue. For example, we have seen in the past pitches that were presented aiming at American investors and expressing everything with the focus of the American market and expressing all the financial issues with dollars. This is a no-go for an EIC accelerator. And sometimes very often we see too much focus on technology and limited provision of market data, which is also a mistake, because keep in mind that the people who will be evaluating your pitch, if you manage to go there, will be market people, will be investors. They want to see the money, they want to see the market size. So very quickly, how the pitch was, at least in the past, it was 10 minutes, all the basics, and I think that this is a very good strategy for general to have a pitch, starting with what is your company and what it wants to do, and finishing with your team and the conclusions. In the meantime, you can include also financial projections, strategy, business model, competition, etc. Technically speaking, more or less, these are the components that every pitch should have, but keep in mind that the EIC Accelerator requests a specific format, and more important, unfortunately, once you submit, this is your pitch. You cannot change it anymore. So the recommendation is to look at the award criteria and try to address them all. Plan enough time in your writing proposal while preparing the pitch. Sometimes, depending on the estimate, depending on the call, you have particular restrictions with respect to the time, with the size of the pitch, etc. So this is the cases that we have seen, and also the use of visuals and not overloading the pitch with slides is also quite important from the feedback that we're getting also from evaluators of the process. Some tips and tricks that we have received from IASME, from the agency that is running the process on behalf of the European Commission, is to try to focus on the customers, on the product that they are selling, and why customers would be paying for it. And if you already have contracts, if you already have customers, it's something that you need to highlight. Always try to engage with the audience through storytelling, explaining things with the easy language. And also, it's very important to be prepared for the tough questions, because the people on the other side of the room will be ready to ask you the tough questions, the ones that you will find problematic to answer. So prepare yourself for that. And I think that this summarizes the findings of the implementation part. And of course, I'm at your disposal for any questions needed.
Well, thank you for that, Grigoris. We certainly had a lot of information going out there. Amazingly, no questions. We have 100 people between YouTube and Zoom, and no questions. I guess this morning was more of a series of lectures than those requiring Q&A, but all useful stuff. I suppose the question I have after all that from each of you really, what would you say are the top three do's and don'ts in terms of the different aspects? I mean, if I begin with the impact, I mean, to me, the single question there is it needed? What is the need? Who needs it? Where are they? How will you reach them? It's all around need. On the don't side, literally, don't go ahead if you don't know that information. You know, if you don't have that information as a company, you shouldn't proceed anyway, but you won't get very far with the commission. On the excellent side, how disruptive is it realistically? And, you know, have you looked around to make sure it is disruptive? The don't side, if it's only an incremental change to what's already there, or it's already there in other markets, then literally think twice about going ahead because you may be wasting your time. And on the implementation side, Yasmin said it all. It's team, team, team. A credible, balanced team that you have confidence will take you through the project. As somebody said, the judges are looking at the rider, not the horse. I think I'm stealing your line there, Grigoris, but it is the rider, not the horse, that they're looking at. Can you believe that these people can take it forward? I don't know whether you have any to add to those, Yasmin.
Actually, you mentioned all the important criteria, but I would.
That's why I went in first.
You left nothing for us.
Oh, don't say that.
What I can add is that you shouldn't apply to this program just because there's some funding offered, You have to really read and analyze if it is suitable for you, if you meet the expectations from the program. And if you are planning to apply to this program, you have to spend some time and you have to allocate your human resources because even if you don't get the funding, even preparing this proposal is really important, and defining your strategy, defining your business goals, it will contribute a lot to your development of your company and of your product. So even if you don't get the funding, don't get upset. You will benefit a lot even through this preparation process.
Yeah, good stuff. Grigoris?
Well, what I always say to people is check very carefully if this is really for you. This is for me the most important aspect. As I told you, there are many great companies out there, technologically very advanced, or they have great ideas. But if they don't fulfill all the requirements, that might be an exercise that will not yield properly, because the competition in those calls is expected to remain extremely high. On the other hand, we have lots of successful cases. We have lots of cases where the competition we have from Turkey, we also have from other countries that I have worked with, successful companies, exactly because they were the right fit, because they understood what the call needs to do and they went through it. And another additional aspect that we normally say, Philip, in those cases is the process of applying sometimes is a process of rethinking the fundamentals of your company, of rethinking your corporate structure, your organizational structure, your team, your global plans for expansion, etc. So through this process, we would encourage companies to engage in this process because they are also learning from this process. But in this thing, they have to enter with an open mind and ask themselves all the time, is this really for me? What am I reading? Is this really helpful for my company? That's the advice that I always give to the trainees.
I think very wise words, and I've often said to companies, it's an exercise in putting a bid together, thinking what you're doing, and it's useful stuff, as training for themselves and for dealing with other financial people and banks and so forth. So yes, you're right. And of course, if you have the right idea, the right proposal, and you make the right noises, you win. It's a bit like the lottery. No matter how many people there are involved, if you have the right thing, you'll get through and capture the imagination. So it's not desperate, put it that way. Merve, do you have anything to add there?
Yes, I have some notes. I saw previous applicants. It's not for actually accelerator proposal, obviously for the VC process from the private sectors. What I see in many SMEs, they fall in love with their ideas. So firstly, don't fall in love with your ideas, because execution, team and products are bigger than ideas. Even during your R&D stage, maybe go and connect with your potential customers and get feedback from them. So easily, you can easily adapt your R&D production to fit your potential customers' needs and demands. Also, many SMEs believe that they don't have competitors from the markets, but in somehow there must be some substitutes that customers need meet their needs. And also, competition means there is a market. So competition is actually good thing, not a bad thing. On value proposition that is very important for the accelerator proposals, analyze and explain what your company offers to your potential customers. Detail your innovative value proposition for your addressed markets and addressed potential customers. Also identify what your competitors offer as value proposition and what is your differences. And obviously think globally. And you should indicate your 5 years business plan if you got funded. And all of you emphasize the most important thing is team. This is my note.
Wise words. Merve sees many companies in the course of her job as national contact point on SMEs. So, you know, wise words indeed. You know, totally back them. We haven't, of course, talked about what happens if you do win funding. Winning funding isn't the goal. Getting a product to market is. So it in itself makes a big change to the company in the way that it's managed, monitored, and of course, you know, what can be a huge influx of cash into a company, how you use it, and to make sure that, you know, you do what you say in the project, because it's not, it doesn't end when you get the money, it's the beginning. Again, any comments on those things, you three?
Can I start?
Yeah, sure.
Indeed, I think that this is a weird situation that what we suggest to the companies is that get advantage of this funding so that you don't need this type of funding in the future.
Yes.
The purpose, this is a unique type of funding that the European Commission has designed exactly for companies who are market-oriented rather than oriented into consecutive rounds of grants. This means that exactly the purpose of the company, such a grant, is to make the company self-sufficient, is to make the company approach its break-even point. And we know that in deep tech, break-even point might not be so easily approachable. I will refresh our memory, Philip. You remember that many companies even got listed in the Nasdaq without demonstrating profits. But nevertheless, the purpose here is to establish companies that then they can rely on their own organic growth or the growth that can come from private investors, but they need this extra push. So practically, when you are preparing yourself for an EIC accelerator and you are aiming to win, you need to prepare yourself for a totally different way of doing business rather than chasing the next grant. You need to prepare yourself for global market expansion, and these are the companies that are normally succeeding. So this is what we would expect.
Yeah, good point. Yes, very important point. Those Nasdaq companies, some of them giant corporations, you know, I mean, I think Tesla is one of them, isn't it? Yet to show a profit and massive billions of investments. So, yeah, there we are. And of course, you know, everybody forgets that some of those giant corporations, in fact, I would say all of them, began as SMEs, you know, from my own country. You know, Mr. Rolls met Mr. Royce, and they're one of the biggest aeroplane engine producers in the world. You know, Mr. Koch set up his little electrical store all those years ago, and now is the biggest company in Turkey. So they're all SMEs that have made good. Very important. There were one or two questions coming in, Yasmin. I think you've probably been monitoring them.
Yes, I did. The first question is this program too big for a company of 4 engineers? Because we don't have a CMO, CFO, even a CEO. Plus, can application overhead hurt our daily business? Of course, it's not too big for a company of 4 engineers. It's open for everyone. And actually, the accelerator is more suitable for startups, for dynamic companies who have the potential to take action very quick. But what I want to recommend here is that if your company is consisting of only engineers, I think there is something missing in the establishment or composition of your company. Not for the accelerator program, but for the sustainability and long-term success of your program. I would recommend you to get some maybe outside consultants who can compensate this gap, because you definitely need some people with management or marketing background. When you apply to the program, you don't have to have these people on board officially, but you can use you can find the right people and you can use their CVs during your application process, and you can introduce them as your potential team members. And if you get the funding, you will get the grant, so you will have the necessary funding to employ these people, which I think you should. Because when you are only for engineers, you obviously focus mostly on the technical side. And as we mentioned in all our presentations, if you only focus in the technical side of your product, you may not make it to the market. So for the application criteria, you can apply. There is no problem in that, but for the rest of the process, if you get the grant or if you want to grow your company with or without the grant, I think you should include some people with business background.
I would add to that everybody sees these positions as a sort of name in gold letters on a door and a huge desk and an official title. It's whoever takes the lead in those roles, who leads on technology, who leads on the commercial stuff, and if there's a shortfall, what resources do you call upon to achieve that? So you might be responsible for the commercial side but not have any real experience, so who do you bring in to help on that? It's looking at covering the topic rather than somebody with a title. Any other comments? No? Any other questions, Yasmin?
Yeah, are step change technologies applicable for accelerator? A step change means more incremental, and what's expected for accelerator is disruptive solution. So just offering an improved technology may not be enough.
But again, what step change in one technology may be disruptive in another? I mentioned the battery car. The electric car is a step change in cars because it's using a different form of power. But if you've invented a battery that has twice the life of anything in the market, that's going to disrupt other battery makers. So it's in relation to something else. It's a very open description. It's up to bidders to show what they believe to be the disruptive or step change part of their product to convince the judges, rather than it being a long list of well-defined disruptions and step changes.
Another question is TRL 6 is a must, or could it be TRL 3 or 4? Unfortunately, 3 or 4 is not suitable for this program because this is innovation funding program. And this funding is not to help your company complete the research process, but what is expected with the accelerator is that they would like to provide this funding to help you access the global market. So you should have a product at the prototype level, and they provide this funding. So with the help of this funding, you can make it to the global market. It's not a research program, so 3 and 4 is unfortunately low.
Yep. Anything else?
One more question. How we can reach this fund and the program? Is there any process model to follow and prepare of the documentation? Yes, there are templates, of course. But as we mentioned in the beginning of the session, the latest final work program is not announced. So we don't have the latest templates. But there are obviously some templates, and they are all they can all be found in the relevant websites. which are stated in the websites of the TÜBİTAK and of the European Commission. So you have to fulfill these templates. You shouldn't just apply with your own template. I think that is the question, if I didn't get it wrong. But there are certain templates. We don't have the latest versions at the moment. So we are expecting, and when we get the latest templates, we can share them with you.
Just to clarify there, templates are what the Commission expects, the form of information that the Commission expects you to present in. But we're often asked, are there any standard proposals that we can use as an example? And the answer is no. Firstly, those proposals are usually in confidence. And secondly, every project is different. So what someone may say about their technology, their market, their potential market, the growth, it's all dependent on each project. There can't be a template. So, you know, that's not possible. Any more questions or comments?
I think no. I think that's all.
Okay.
So okay. I think we can conclude.
Okay. Just before we do, any final comments from Grigoris or Merve?
My final comment is stay tuned. Horizon Europe just starting. There's going to be many exciting opportunities, not only in SME instrument or EIC Accelerator, but also lots of calls that companies might fit in, but also lots of cascade funding opportunities that Merve said before. I think that the key part of this process is be informed. Our website and all our activities are very lively, and but also there are many other sources. So stay tuned and get any opportunity that might be existing for your company.
Yep, that's good advice. Thanks for the advertisement. Anything from you, Merve?
It's just you can subscribe our official Horizon 2020 website. It's horizon2020.org.tr. You can find all the related infos, and the news about the Horizon Europe and Accelerator.
Okay, that's great. Well, from me, thank you again for listening. It's good to be here in cyberspace, if not in person. I wish you well with Horizon Europe. There's a huge opportunity over the next 7 years, so hope to capitalize on it. We shall help all that we can. We're there, even if virtually we're available. So thank you for listening. And over to Yasmin to close the webinar.
Tekrar teşekkür ederiz dinlediğiniz için. Umarım faydalı bulmuşsunuzdur. Bu platform bir 15 dakika kadar daha açık kalacak. Eğer sorularınız olursa chatbox'tan yazabilirsiniz. Daha sonra cevapları sorularla beraber ilgili web sitelerinde paylaşılacak. Tekrar web sitelerinin adresini vermek istiyorum. Bizim projemizin web sitesi turkeyinage2020.eu. TÜBİTAK'ın web sitesi de age2020.org.tr. Buralarda hem kayıtları bulabilirsiniz bu web sitelerinde, hem de soru ve cevapları bulabilirsiniz. Bir sonraki webinarımız Şubat'ın sonunda gerçekleşecek. Gene ilgili kanallardan sizlere duyuru yapıyor olacağız. Dinlediğiniz için tekrar teşekkür ederiz. Görüşmek üzere. See you all.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.